This panel is proudly sponsored by The Clearing.
Welcome back to Running Remote Online. My name is Danny Page. You know, sometimes I wish the viewers could see the show behind the show, because sometimes what happens before the panel is just as funny and interesting as what happens on the panel. Now, that's not going to happen here. We have an incredible panel, the impact of remote on hybrid and workplace transformation. We felt for a long time maybe like the problems of remote were problems for the startups, small businesses, 100-person, 200-person companies that were pioneering in the space, right? Not anymore. Not anymore. It is now a major global workplace issue. And Tara Carcillo, the president of, see, I said Carcillo. I had to roll the L's because I'm in Spain. Tara Carcillo, the president and CEO of The Clearing, will be leading this panel. Hi, Tara. How are you?
Hi. Good to see you. It's the morning for me, so I'm excited to be with everyone.
Yeah, we kind of have to adopt the sort of Truman Show mentality, you know, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you may be at the moment. We're happy to have you here. Before I hand to you, Tara, this panel is, of course, presented by The Clearing. The Clearing is, that you're the business, that you're the president and CEO of. The Clearing is a boutique professional services management consultancy that partners with top leaders as they address strategic and operational opportunities or risks in an intentional, time-bound, and human-centered way. Inspired by I love the branding, by the way, inspired the idea of creating clearings to tackle critical challenges. Veterans Chris McGough and John Miller founded it in 2009. You are now the president and CEO. That's like the boilerplate. Tell me in 30 seconds what you guys really do.
Yeah, we sit alongside senior leaders who have lots of different stakeholders who must be involved in problem solving or taking advantage of an opportunity, who all speak literal and figurative different languages, and they have to collaborate quickly to get to a result.
Awesome. Very well said. Tara, I'll hand it over to you. And a special treat, Liam Martin will jump in and lead the Q&A period later on, co-founder of Running Remote. We're excited for this brilliant panel. Tara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Danny. So it's so nice to be with everyone today. I have the privilege of sitting alongside some serious experts in this arena, and we prepped earlier this week, and I realized that they've known each other and sat on stages together in many forums. So those of you out there might recognize them as well, and I think we're up for a really good experience together. I'd like to do some quick intros of our panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Paul McKinlay. He's the VP of Communications and Remote Working at Cimpress. Cimpress is a parent company to e-commerce brands like Vistaprint, which you might recognize. He's been a leading employee communications, change, engagement, learning and development expert across teams. He's worked both in-house and in agencies for over 20 years. So Paul, thanks for being with us. Next, I'd like to introduce Nellie Hyatt. She's the head of Workplace Transformation. She works at Verge Sense, previously a workplace strategist at Stripe for 4 years, supporting the company's rapid growth. In 2020, Nellie co-founded Workplace and became an independent advisor leading the future of work movement. In her new role, Nellie is working with the most innovative companies to help redesign their employee and workplace experiences. Nellie's a thought leader and contributes regularly to industry-related events, conferences, and podcasts. And finally, Tracy. Tracy Hawkins is the VP of Real Estate and Workplace and Remote Experience at Twitter. Tracy's been active in all aspects of corporate real estate and facilities management for over 15 years. Her skills encompass project management, design and construction, leasing and transactions, workplace operations, and the remote experience. With international experience leading corporate real estate teams in film, fashion, and the technology sectors, notably previously at Yahoo for 7 years, and as mentioned at Twitter now. She's been at Twitter for the last 8 years, joining them to lead their EMEA and APAC real estate and workplace teams in 2013. She's lived all over the world, and she's got a 5-year-old that she juggles in the midst of all of this. So welcome to these panelists. I'm so glad to have you here. Let me give the audience just a really quick high-level roadmap of what we're going to cover. So we'd like to spend a little bit of time first establishing some shared definition on these terms that we're using often, frequently across all of our organizations and across the globe. I'm going to ask these panelists what they mean by remote, hybrid, and terms of the sort, so that we can kind of gain a shared sense of what we're talking about here. The next, I'd like to spend some time giving them a chance to give us their perspective on what does it mean to think and design for the human experience today and moving forward. Third, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the physical or office footprint and what the impact they see as happening coming out of the COVID era, but also just as the work and progress related to technology and workforces continues to evolve. And then finally, any other details and comments that they think are essential and included in overall workplace design. So let's get started, and panelists, I'll kick it off to one of you to start each of the questions, and then we'll have some time for the rest of you to chime in, and I'll keep an eye on your time. So the first question, level setting on definitions. Many of these classifications, as I mentioned, as we introduced all of you, of working were around prior to the global pandemic as we've experienced it. They weren't always widely adapted or discussed, and if and when they were discussed, often we didn't have a shared definition and meaning for them. I'd love, and Paul, let me kick this off with you first. Can you give us a sense of what you think are the key terms, my hint, right? Remote, in-person, hybrid, how you think they are best defined as we move forward across societies and organizations?
Hey, I'll start, but I feel like the newbie on this panel with these experts who've been doing this for years around. We were one of the remote forced teams that last March moved to remote working and have been learning a lot through this period, especially since we made the decision to go to permanently remote last August. And so I'm happy to kick off with a few of my experiences, but I'd love to hear from Nellie and Tracy if we're going to start with the precise definitions of all things remote working. It's really interesting, and I'm really glad you started with this, because we've been talking a little bit externally, particularly in talent acquisition, about moving to what we called remote first. And I got some challenge on it from some of the people out there in social media land, saying you're not remote first because you still keep collaboration centers. You're not remote first because some people sometimes go to an office. And so it's a really good topic to get into, I think, to start. For us, remote first means we're essentially flipping the paradigm from everything being designed to work for somebody in an office as the primary state, and we're moving it for everybody, everything to work for somebody who is remote, and also to work for somebody in an office. And so we just turned that thing around, and it's worked really well in terms of being able to communicate with our teams. Hybrid's an interesting expression as well. I feel like we've always been hybrid. Maybe this is something we are more experienced at because we have manufacturing facilities, we have 40 offices all over the world, we have always been distributed, and we've always had some people working remotely and some people working in office environments. So I think we've always been in that place. I would love to also use this forum just to officially reject the term returning to work, if we can do that today. I feel like everybody's been working more, whether they've been in an office or in a manufacturing plant, or whether they've been actually in their basement like me. So I would love to put that one to bed as well today.
Thank you, Paul. Nellie, anything to add, and then we'll go to Tracy.
Yeah, I think I echo what Paul said. Like, all those terms are very charged, and some of them get the status of buzzword, and some other get a status of like, we hate this word. And as a person who've learned 5 languages until today, and hopefully a few more, I know that there's never the perfect word to describe what we want to mean, but it's all the context of that word. And so a team can be distributed, a person cannot be distributed, and a team can be remote, but a person is not remote. She's probably in the physical world living with other people. So hybrid is really imperfect, but somehow it's the word that encompasses fluidity, that encompasses ambiguity. As a human being, I'm ambiguous, I'm awkward, I'm changing, I'm complex. Somehow hybrid shows all of that. I'm gonna say I'm gonna be remote, but I want to go to the office one time every month or a week every other month when I'm in town and I want to visit my friends. So we are ambiguous, and hopefully hybrid is the umbrella that allow for that. Allow for me to changing my mind and be different at certain time of my life as I go through pregnancy and birth and loss and grief and excitement and hard work. And so hopefully the companies can allow for that.
Tracy, what else? What did we miss that you think is important to add to this shared definition or how we're using these terms?
Well, first of all, I feel like I have to say sorry to Paul because of social media land picking on him, and as the representative from social media, sorry, Paul.
Thank you.
I feel like, you know, both these folks have really hit the nail on the head. Before the pandemic really hit here in the US, we'd been spending the last 18 months before that really trying to decentralize and not have the center of gravity be in San Francisco where we first started, although it's still very important to us. But we were still a very office-centric culture, even though we were embracing, you know, being in different places around the world, trying to embrace different ways people worked. And actually, I just in January last year, I'd moved from the finance function to the people team. Our whole team had, because we were trying to really help with that effort. And I'd sat down with my boss, and my new boss, and she'd said to me, you know, your workplace is wherever you work, and that's not just the four walls of the office. And so your team has created such a great culture in the offices, and it's like we need to really embrace and meet people wherever they are. And I was like super excited about doing that. And I was thinking, wow, you know, I'm going to be able to do all this research and reach out to people like GitLab and, like, you know, really set this up and take some time to really think about it. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh my God, a few weeks later, and everyone's sort of looking at me to be like, how do we handle this? We're all going remote. But, you know, we were chatting before, and you chatting when we all first met. And I think really, you know, where we want to get to is, like, it's really hard with these labels. Like you say, they sort of mean different things to different people, different companies, different cultures. And where we're trying to get to is, like, it's just work at the end of the day. It's work. You know, as long as you get the work done, as long as you feel like you have equal access to the culture, to great fulfilling work, to career growth, which I don't think remote folks did have as much of before the pandemic, because there just wasn't an appreciation for a lot of the barriers and challenges that they encountered. I think that is the most important thing, you know, rather than what do we call each piece. And like Paul said, really engineering all of the ways you're working, the policies, the procedures internally, to think, does it work for a remote person? And anything that we're doing in the offices, how does that encompass the remote experience as well? All these water cooler conversations and things that would happen in an office that remote folks would miss out on. You know, those are the things that now we can all appreciate, having been remote and wanting to embrace being remote all the time or partially. Like, how do we get over those different things so that it is a great experience for everyone? So I'm on the same page with these folks. The hybrid name sounds horrible. It just like some of remote, I don't like that term either, because it still infers that like there's a center of gravity somewhere and you're somewhere away from it. Like the center of gravity is Earth and you're on Mars somewhere, you know. So I think that will change over time as well.
I totally agree. Can I add one funny thing that happened this week? So we full good intentions, renamed the offices into collaboration centers, but for people to visit when they want to visit them. And somebody asked me, well, does it imply I'm not collaborative if I don't want to go to a collaboration center? And should we really call it a center? Because that sounds like it's the most important thing. And I'm like, I give up with naming things. It's clearly not my thing.
You can't win.
So knowing that we may continue to trip over these terms over time, the common theme I heard, and Tracy, you started to tease this out, but I'd like to circle it back to the full panel, is this concept around whether you're working remotely, on site, at the center, not at the center, the human experience seems to me to be a continual place of study and practice, and a lot of emergent thinking on. So I'd love for each of you to comment a little bit about, because we are where we are today, reflective of all the events, let's say over the past 24 months or so, just to give ourselves a time frame, what design elements are becoming more and more important that organizations attend to when they think about the human experience? I think sometimes it's easy to assign design to a physical footprint because it fits naturally in an org structure, right? Okay, that team's going to account for that. Or, IT needs or technology needs. Okay, that team. But this idea of human experience seems to walk across many different departments or divisions. So could each of you comment a little bit on, if I need to design for my global workforce, what else do I need to consider that I might not be holding as a priority now and moving forward? Let's go. Tracy, could you start us?
Sure, yeah. So I think it's interesting what you said about teams, actually. So that's the place to start when you're thinking about the employee experience and putting yourself in the shoes of how different folks want to work. So we have a team at Twitter, a how we work team. That's what it is, how we work. And it's a cross-functional team from all over the place, all around the world, really thinking about the whole experience and everything that needs to be encompassed, from, folks in the people team to IT to inclusion and diversity, and people in London, people over here, a real cross section to understand how do we need to design and intentionally think about how we move forward especially once offices reopen, so that we don't revert to old behaviors and really not think about how we need to embrace remote, but also that difficult bunch in the middle that we keep calling hybrid, and make it all work together. And for us, it's, number one, looking at all the things over the last, God, how long has it been? You said 24 months, my God. What were the things that worked? What were the things that surprised us as folks who weren't remote before, but suddenly were thrown into it? What are the behaviors and new etiquettes that we need to bring into place? And what are the things that we really like that we want to keep doing? Like, we know we used to do our whole company meetings from San Francisco. We'd all troop into what we call the Commons, which is like a big cafe, and then all the other offices would dial in, and so they would be little dots on a screen that you probably wouldn't see because there was a presentation up, and we would all be in the room having our conversations, and it was not a great experience to dial into. And now that we're all remote, we've all been dialing in like this, and you're equally presented, and you can all ask questions in chat, and it's just been a better experience. And there's quite a few of those examples that we're like, do you know what, we're not going to revert back to doing that in person. And all of our folks that were remote before the pandemic are like, see, this is the things we've been trying to tell you for so long, and it does work better. And we're like, yes, that is actually something that we want to embrace, and just being more intentional around asynchronous communication, so that everybody has the equal chance to see what's going on, even if they haven't been, in a room together. It's just, making things, having more equality around how we do things. Not to say, don't hate me, people out there watching this, that there are things that we still want to do in person, and there are things that we want to bring the company together for. But we'll be very intentional around that, and 90% of what we do will be about choice and allowing people to work in the way that's best for them. And I also want to say, we do not have all the answers right now. Like, I don't think anybody has all the answers now. All the pulse surveys in the world, all of the different check-ins with different groups, we know is done in the midst of a pandemic, when no one wants to go on public transport. Everyone's been worried about the unfolding situation and not having all the details around variants and all the things happening in the world. And so we know that we've got to wait to see how people actually work and show up when they feel safe. But having said that, we want to set them up for success with some guidance and some behaviors, and we're working on kind of some training at the moment of all the things we've learned that we want to keep, so that when we do re-enter the offices, we don't, as I say, revert to these old behaviors that exclude people.
Thanks, Tracy. Nellie, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I love that first of all, I love what Tracy said. But the word design that you used, Tara, is very interesting, because there was a team in charge of designing the offices. There was no team really designing the experience from home to the office, or when you travel to the next office, or when you have an offsite. Everything was overlooked. And I remember already at Stripe, I was thinking, oh, who's taking charge, or who's designing anything for our remote folks? Like their population is growing, and yet it's not under my scope, it's not under people's scope, and somehow they are overlooked. And we could feel the pain. They were having a very suboptimal experience. Suddenly, when we all went remote, we realized that first, it was not nice to be remote when other people were in office. This experience, even just the technology, the way we design video conferencing or conference room, were not inclusive of their presence. And now we have this chance to do it better, because we've all been on that side. And we want to, and I love the word that Tracy used, intention. We want to be more intentional on like, what is the journey of each human being? The journey even before when they are applying to a job, and when they are going to a next company. Should we have alumni of the company? This is how we're talking now. We were really trying to be more intentional across the entire time with us. And hopefully, that's maybe very Silicon Valley tech company, but hopefully they leave better human beings than before they come. That's something where we're like, oh, we want to create a culture that uplifts you, not only as an employee to do your best work, but also as a human being, because the experience you have at work will influence your experience outside of work. If you have a very shitty day, you're going to be really shitty to your loved ones when you go home. So actually what happens at work, it's really impactful on how you behave as a human being on this planet. And the last thing I want to say is, again, with this change that we have to rethink how we were doing and to do it better. We can also think like, oh, how can we have the conversation more public? Like when, as Tracy said, and Paul, this is how we met also, like building in public, putting the question out there, not thinking we're going to have the answer by being siloed and looking inward, but actually tapping from other resources. Darren Murph at GitLab has been really giving a lot. And this is great, because it's not about, oh, we're going to be great with all the rest, or we're going to win the top places to work at and everybody else sucks. No, actually, again, it's other human beings that are in another company, and maybe one day I'll poach them. So I still want them to have a great experience when they're learning skills at a different company. So how us leaders, we also share this experience, how we go to running remote and share our knowledge, and hopefully are going to acquire a lot more knowledge so we can do better for humankind.
Two amazing answers. I don't know what there is left to say. I would echo everything, and especially about the remote first community. Having joined it recently as a newbie, the generosity and wisdom that's out there is just phenomenal, and it's given. I've found it to be given and shared so generously, and to be so beneficial. And anybody who's struggling with any issue on remote, I would just encourage them to get out there and approach someone directly on LinkedIn or send them a tweet, and I think you'll find you get the information that you need, as well as maybe some argumentative people, just to get that in again. I think we set some guiding principles at the start of this transition, which have really helped us. I might be renaming our working group the How We Work team after hearing that, because I just love it. I think it's the how and where we work team for us, but I just love that as there's a couple of things that have set us up to make great progress through this change. The first is we're still founder led, and our founder, when this decision was made to go permanently remote first, said, Not can you go make life a bit easier for people, or can you go fix the problems, or can you go work out what people need. He said, I want you to make remote a towering strength of our culture and a competitive advantage. And that just changed our how we work teams mentality on every single issue and challenge. And it set the bar, and it took us to a different place. One of our guiding principles that's really helped us is your location should not be an advantage or a disadvantage. And so even if you are in a place where you previously worked in an office, therefore you will be able to go to a collaboration center, versus somebody we've now hired 1,000 miles from any real estate that we own, we're not putting things back into our collaboration center designs that would make it an advantage. So yeah, it'd be nice to have an IT guru tech bar to fix your computer, but person 1,000 miles away doesn't have that. So no, that isn't going to be in there. We're not putting Zoom technology into all of the rooms to re-encourage people to go back to the 5 people in a room, 1 person on a screen thing. That, as you said, people that have worked remotely have told us this for so long, and we kind of ignored them for so long. It's just such a bad experience. And so being very, I love being deliberate. I think we are deliberate. And the last thing I'd add is having people dedicated to this rather than it be a 10th of their day job is something that we've got real benefit from. And so we have a wonderful person who wakes up every morning with the sole task of creating the world's best onboarding experience for a remote first new hire. And because of that, it's in a really good place. And it isn't a 1/5 of her job, it's her job. And so really dedicating people in the key things that need to be right has really served us well.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next question, I do want to encourage anyone in the audience to start to share your questions in the chat. We will have some Q&A time towards the end here. So if they're already showing up in your mind, go ahead and record them so that we can pivot to them after we go through the last few questions here as a formal process. I continue to hear this resounding, drumbeat around access and equity and inclusion, and all these different reflections of it. I'd love to spend a minute with each of you, and you've started to hint at this, so you might find yourself repeating yourself, which I think is fine. But under our most dominant constructs around physical design, virtual design, and sort of our historical ways that we've conceived of going to work. Could each of you share anything that you think will become more and more important, again, post the pandemic experience and where we are generationally, in the physical design of workplaces? And I ask it that way, having caught cues from you as we prepped earlier this week. But when we think about the physical design of workplaces, what's important for managers and leaders to continue to attend to in light of how far we've come and in light of these different experiences around where we're working from? Physical space design. Nellie, can I ask you to start us off?
Sure. It's a very interesting conversation, and it's also where I'm gonna feel I'm gonna be vulnerable because I'm gonna play the futurist, and I don't know if the future will be exactly as I have in my head, but what I start to see is that work will happen in our digital HQ, and we are gonna be better at managing the technology overload and the technology pings and notification around us, and even the laptop. Like when I open my laptop in a conference room, I block the communication with any other human beings. I'm like, this is where or even on my phone. So I think like we are not only getting better at shutting down apps, but also the devices, putting them away for having the in-person human experience when we are together in the same room. So this is really what I see. I think work will happen in the digital HQ. So everybody have access to the information and people are not disadvantaged or advantageous. Everybody has access to that information, and we are gonna learn how to be better at documenting and sharing information. I also want people to design the experience in the digital HQ, because right now we are juggling with Zoom and Slack and other things, and they're not there's not a coherent or cohesive experience. So hopefully there's going to be people in charge of that, as Paul said. Like, I want people who's their job to design the digital HQ experience. In the physical, hopefully we're going to have days when we go to the office and there's no laptop and there's no phones, and it's about the human experience, and it's about community and socializing and brainstorming with our heads, using the material, being crafty together, being well together. So maybe having that body movement together, but really going back to the campfires where we were a tribe and we were having human experience. And work happened in the digital HQ every time I decide to open my laptop, but move away from being with around other human beings.
Who wants to go next? What a cool start.
I mean, not me, because that was amazing. I mean, yes to all of the above. Nelly, that was great. For us, it's really interesting because throughout the pandemic, we've been doing these surveys with our employees to see how they're getting on. But we've also started asking them, you know, what does the office represent to you? You know, why would you, we say hire an office, like, you know, why would you hire the office to come to work? And, you know, the answers that we get are really, they're very different. Some people say, I want to come into the office to collaborate, you know, and hopefully I'm also thinking that loads of amazing things are being invented during this whole period that are going to make collaboration easier like this as well, you know. So, but people have said, you know, I want to come into the office to collaborate, or I want to come into the office to see people in person. But, you know, we had quite a few people who responded who said, I want to come into the office to do focus work. Where I live just doesn't suit what I need to do. And I just like that idea of being in Twitter Mecca and like sitting there and having a space that's designed for me to focus. But then should I need to go collaborate with someone, it's really easy. And so it's really not a one size fits all, you know, and that's what we've got to think about when we're designing our spaces and when we're designing our practices and behaviors moving forward. Again, the intentionality around everything we do, even in the physical space, has got to be able to encompass that experience of the people that aren't there. And it's also got to have someone reminding folks who are in the office that day that there is a whole bunch of people that aren't with them at that time, but need to be a part of the conversation, need to be a part of the work that they're doing, if we're going to be a truly global company. So, but also for us, we're not ripping up our design of our offices right away. Like we're focusing more on like the behaviors and the asynchronous communication and our technology and trialing out different and new technologies and seeing how that works, and some of the AI and these like lands that you can go into and meet someone there and see their little avatar, which are going to get way more sophisticated. Right now they're like the first movie of Tron, and I'm hoping they're going to go to the later movie of Tron so that they look a little bit more kind of engaging. But I think those sorts of things are really going to gain momentum. And I think the biggest thing that somebody said is we have all these different tools that we use. If somebody can invent one tool that can encompass all the things that we need to do and all the different ways that we need to communicate, then we'll be flying, right? And that will inform a lot of how we design our spaces moving forward too. But that's part of some of the barriers at the moment is, oh, did someone just Slack me? Like, I feel like my workload has gone up because I'm like checking Slack and someone texts me and I'm looking on email and now someone shared a Google Doc with me. And like, so if someone can get all these things together, I think that will make communication and influence how we design our spaces and simplify the whole experience.
Man, it's hard going third on these. Amazing. I mean, we're hiring people all over the world, nowhere near real estate. So that's not to negate that challenge. We're also looking at having smaller existing offices where we have long leases. And we've just put out an RFP to globally to look at who's got space and what does it look like and who can help us for future needs. And there's some amazing startups now, like Cody and Gable and so many more. Apologies if I missed you, that, you know, really are making neighborhoods into potential collaboration spaces or individual focused workspaces. And it's just so much fun to see all this happening. We've closed on 3 purposes for a collaboration center, and I think this is probably repetitive, but just to name what we did. So we see them for socializing, we see them for collaborating, and we see them for focused work. And we do have people who want to be in an office. The last survey we did, it was 2% of people wanted to be in an office 5 days a week. So it's a very small number who want to return to the old world, but a large number want to have some in-person collaboration time for various purposes at some point. And so as we redesign or design spaces, or as we take new leases on spaces where we've let them lapse over the last 12 months when we didn't need them, and we now look again for what we need, we're creating what we've called a minimally lovable product. So we want to open functional and nice workspaces that we keep a lot of our budget powder dry to see how they're used. Because we don't know how people are going to use these. And Tracy, I think you said, I don't know if it was on the call or before the call, how people fill in a survey in the middle of a pandemic telling us what they want to do after a pandemic may or may not represent what actually happens. And so we strongly believe in-person collaboration is part of our future, but we want to keep lots of flexibility around what that would look like. In terms of events, in terms of collaboration spaces, in terms of people meeting up in a Starbucks or wherever. We just don't know what that's going to look like.
I think I would love to add something, because I think there's like an interesting point between all of us is we didn't fall into becoming remote advocates. Somehow I still fit under the hybrid because first I still love the experience of being in person in an environment that has been curated for me with amazing architects and interior designers behind it to really make me think or feel something when I enter this space. And that's something that I still want architects and interior designers to work on. So everywhere I walk, that has been designed for me and to feel something. And also the other thing is, it is the sustainable act, or the more sustainable act, to try to reuse our buildings. The goal is not to ever demolish it or leave them vacant and build another building for a co-working space or another building to be the community center. Like, we have those spaces already, and teams are going to meet for offsite. And so I Googled a long time ago to say maybe offsite will become onsite. We have those spaces. Instead of building more, let's try to reuse and use them at the fullest of their potential, because this is the most sustainable act we could do, reusing the resources that we have already instead of building more because they're different or because they're not as optimal as we want them.
It's been really helpful to have the list of what we don't want to do as well as we design these things. I talked about technology support, but we absolutely do not want executives to have an office in any of these places, because that's like a magnet to other team members to feel like that's where they should be. There's just so many things that we have to really focus on not recreating. We fell into remote and replicated office life from our homes. Now we're learning how not to do that over time. It would be so easy to fall back into what people think is an office life, which isn't what we want it to be, and unpick the fantastic progress that people have made at being effective remotely.
So I have one more question, and then I think we'll go to the wider audience to see what's coming in, because I'm guessing there's lots of stuff bubbling in people's minds and hopefully in the chat. One of the things that I'm hearing in what you're sharing and in the other circles and networks that I'm a part of is this, what appears to be showing up as a debate around choice, right? What must a C-suite executive declare you must do or can't do versus, employees should be able to do, work from wherever they want? can each of you share a little bit of advice as if you were speaking to the executives in the crowd who need to be making this decision, where choice matters, and any risks or opportunities you see based on where you think choice should exist. So it's a little bit esoteric, but there's a theme here around whether someone's telling you to be someplace or whether you're deciding it, and then the impact on others as a result. I'll leave that open. Whoever wants to pick that up first. I know I've been making Paul go last, so he might want to grab it before the other two jump in. But the risk. Yeah, go ahead.
I will. I quite like second, though, just to see where it's going. But let's give first a go here. There was a very large tech company that's flip-flopped a little bit and made another announcement yesterday. And I don't know if anybody else saw it. And I don't mean to be critical, but I'm a communicator and I look at language. And the language in the announcement, the quote from the leader of the business was, probably a misquote, but this is what I remember it saying was, we're going to expect most people to be in an office 3 days a week. And for the other 2 days a week, they can go and work where they can do their best work. And I was kind of like, don't you want them to do their best work all of the days of the week? And like, I really want my team to be where they're doing their best work every day of the week, wherever that is. And so I think, maybe that's just my pickiness at the language, but I feel like that's been our approach to this is let's let people find the place that they want to work best. And unfortunately, remote isn't an option for everybody. If you're one of our fantastic team members working on a production line, making things for customers, then you can't do that from your home. It's harder for customer care people to work from home with data privacy and all sorts of other considerations, or even in some countries where domestic internet broadband is much harder to come by. So this is not a kind of fair thing to start with. But where people can choose to do their work in the place that they can do their work best, then I would encourage them to be allowed to do that. And I think we've listened hard. I talked about one of our guiding principles. Another one was to take extensive feedback from team members all the way through this process. And we've been actively listening and responding to the extent that we can. And our team members resoundingly told us, those that can work remotely, they wanted to work remotely. And so we're not mandating remote work or office work. We're just mandating great work. And so hopefully everyone can find a place that they can do that in.
I would say it's been an interesting time for polarizing statements. There was a statement from a CEO of a very notorious service to office company very recently.
Yeah.
Who had to do a similar flip-flop around saying something really silly about folks who come to the office are going to be the most engaged and the most, they know what's going on at the company, which is a ridiculous statement. And since then has had to say, there's a whole load of context to that, and I didn't really mean that. And, words do really matter. Like calling it remote, like I said before, that inference of you're a million miles away from something else. We need to come up with something better than that, and every company, I think, you can't go wrong with talking to your employees, understanding, like Paul said, meeting them where they're at. Understanding what's important to them, not assuming, not doing big sweeping changes without doing your research. Do some surveys, talk to them, talk to the different groups, understand how they work. And for us, in a very similar vein to Paul, it's going to be about choice. Yes, there are real world limitations around where you can sometimes do business. Yes, there's definitely different departments work in different ways. If you're producing a physical product, that's going to dictate a lot of how you work, where you're based, access to the resources that you need to do your job is going to be different too. And so that's why at Twitter, even before the pandemic, we were thinking about it's choice. It's, why do we want to lose an employee because they suddenly tell us that they need to move to support their family or to make a life change or to go back to where they grew up, or for whatever reason they want to do. Why do we want to lose that really great employee just because we don't have some bricks and mortar there? You know, I look back at that now and I think that's crazy. Or why would we say to somebody, no, you can't work from home or wherever you want to work, if their job means they can fully do that and we have everything in place to enable them to do it? A lot of this is insecurity around, you know, not being able to see a person, or I can't see them working. Well, you know, that's crazy. If you employ somebody, you make sure you have goals, and team working agreements are really important as well. We're rolling those out at Twitter, that we understand how we work together and what our mission is as a company and what we're driving towards. And if we can execute against that and be successful, then what does it matter where you work? What does it matter about your geography? But don't assume, you also can't assume, and please don't hate me on this call, that everybody wants to work remote, because they don't. And I'll tell you now, I have employees who are really desperate to get back into the office because it's what suits them. They're outside of offices tweeting by the Twitter sign saying, I really can't wait to get back inside and see my colleagues. And like Paul said, it's a small amount that want to be there every single day, but it's a considerable majority that want to be there 2 or 3 days a week, because, you know, that's just how they want to work. I also think remote work's had a bad rap over the last year because it's not been real remote work, has it? Like, I'm guessing that everyone on this call isn't normally imprisoned in their houses, not allowed to go see their friends, having to wear a mask all the time, and not even being able to go to the coffee shop. Like, remote work doesn't mean sitting in your house all the time. It means going to work from wherever you want to work. So if I want to work from a coffee shop, if I want to go sit in the park and work, like if I want to work from my home or somewhere else, then I can do that. So I do feel that the experience of remote work for some who are hating it at the moment isn't really the true remote work. And so just as we need balance of choice, we need to bring back the balance for the remote workers too, and what that experience looks like, because it just hasn't been a good reflection over the last year, because it's just been a kind of all falsely imprisoned in our homes. So for me, it's about choice, but also when we open the offices, not reverting to old behaviors and saying we're giving choice without doing the hard work of putting the etiquettes in place, giving managers and leaders training, and making sure that the leaders at the company aren't all coming in the office every day, which is like the forcing function for everybody to come back in. You know, there's going to have to be some give with leaders. If they like being in the office, they're going to have to, you know, work from home a few days and just make sure that everybody in their team's feeling comfortable and empowered to work how they do their best work.
It's hard to finish. I feel you, Paul, but I think I want to say how impressed I am with Paul and Tracy's leadership, because it's not only giving choice, it's giving choices. So the goal is not to go from office-centric or even fully remote to now you have to fend for yourself. No, actually, we are designing options for you to choose from. And even we are, and I know Tracy, like we are also looking at the technology that will give you information for you to know what are the options and picking your best option. Because again, like it's not like, oh, the only option is working from home, or the only option is working from the office. But it's like, oh, you want to work in a co-working space, I'm also going to design this experience of you. Or you want to know who is in the office so you can make your decision, I'm going to give you the tool for you to do that. Or you need to travel, maybe each employee will now have a travel budget to meet their team whenever they want to meet them. All of this needs to be designed, otherwise we're going to a culture where it's good luck and fend for yourself. And this is not where we want to be. So it's not only what top leadership needs to give choice, but we need to give choices and options and good options. Give me good options. If you give me the access to a choice, give me amazing options to choose from and design that path for me. So again, I feel cared for, I feel supported wherever I choose to be every day.
Fantastic. Thank you all for riffing off of one another, riffing with me. Liam, if you're out there, I think you're out there. My sense is we're ready for any of the questions that have started to show up. Final prompt. So
I'm here, guys.
Thank
you so much. This is amazing. We have like a dozen or so questions, and just for everyone, by the way, you guys were like talking about a certain company. They figured it all out in the chat. So They're currently like sending articles about the CEO of WeWork and why he's a piece of trash. But that's someone else. That's people in the chat saying that, not me. All right, so let's get into the questions here because we got a dozen, and I want to fly through them as quickly as humanly possible so that everyone can get as much value as possible out of this panel, which has been fantastic, by the way. I don't know how anyone else feels in the chat, but this has been great stuff on my side. All right, first question comes from Kate. Is there any specific organizations, is there anything specific your organizations are doing or planning to do to make remote work easier for those of your employees who are parents? I just had a brand new baby daughter. She's about 10 months old. She's downstairs right now. You may hear her screaming in the background. And that's a big challenge for a lot of people that are really like, that's one of the big things that's holding people back from embracing remote work.
Yeah, that's tough. I have a 5-year-old who I was on pins because it's early here. It's like 8:39 and she goes off to school at 8 and I was waiting for her to come bowling in and be like, bye, mommy, but luckily my husband managed to keep her under control. Yeah, we have been very cognizant of our parents, and actually not just parents, but folks maybe caring for an older relative. We look at it as we're on a journey with folks at Twitter, and we're not just there for be the robot and tell me what you're doing at work. And we know there's other stuff that influences what's going on, whether that is being a parent, being a carer, some crazy stuff that's happened in the world over the last year, that people bring that with them to work because it affects them as a person. And so we've done things like, number one, being very cognizant of those events in the world and doing what we call, and I have to put, everything is bird related at Twitter, so we call them flock talks when we bring everyone together, which are really amazing. And I don't want to make light of them because we at particular times for particular groups will bring everyone together where they can talk about what they're finding challenging, and that really informs us around some of the things we need to do to accommodate folks. And so we've started doing things like days of rest where nobody does any work, typically a Friday or a Monday, and we all just step away and do whatever it is when it is needed for mental health or just recharging, and it's just your time that day, and that someone from another region or someone from another team is not going to be messaging you. So we've done days of rest. We've brought in, wait for it, it's another bird one, every day you have an hour of perch time. So you get to pause, catch up, whether that's work related or you just go do something for yourself, hop on your Peloton or, go read a book or do some training or something. And it gives you a little bit of space. For parents specifically, it's been really tough with all the kids working from home, learning from home. It's stuck in my head. But I actually got really lucky because my little one was in a class of just 10 and they've been able to social distance. Amazing. All wearing their masks, not complaining about it. And so they've been in school the whole time, but I've been conscious of folks who have not had that situation. First of all, just embracing seeing them show up, being like, hi, little one, come chat, tell us your name and all of that. The very first call I had with the whole company around what we were doing for the pandemic, my child decided during my 30-second segment to come and tell everyone she needed a poop. So we've all seen that sort of thing over the last year.
We all do need that from time to time.
Yeah. And so we're just being accommodating, right? But some of the things we put in place, so we actually introduced something called Camp Twitter, where we partnered with OutSchool, who are a huge provider of on-demand lessons and classes on all different types of things, from science to art to everything that you could think of, and you can do on-demand or live classes. So when mom or dad's got that meeting where they just don't want to be interrupted, they can bring the kiddie in, or when they just need something and they want to we've all spent more time with our kids, which have been amazing as well, then they can call on OutSchool. We also had our executives doing story time. So our executives came on and read, different books, and it was hilarious. Jack, our CEO, read a book he actually wrote, and it was a 5-page thing when he was 5, and it was just so funny to see it. And we just various accommodations. We put in extended leave for folks who just really can't work, to give them the time off to be able to focus on family. And then we've brought in things like the Happify app, which is really great for mental health. Another, I can't remember the name right now, but another kind of app that just really helps you manage through some of the challenges that we've been experiencing over the last 12 months. And we have somebody who works directly for Twitter, who is a doctor, psychologist, and all of that, who's been connecting with our employees around mindfulness, meditation, and like the various things going on in their lives. So it's not going to be perfect. You know, I'm not saying we have all the answers, but we've just been trying to really put ourselves in the shoes of a lot of the population of our company and how we can help them. Yeah.
Got it. Great. Anyone else want to add 30 seconds to that?
Yeah, 30 seconds. First, I was in love with the Twitter camper, Kids Kev, and I told all of my clients, did you see what Twitter is doing? You should do the same to support your parents. The one thing I want to say is, as a parent, I have 2 younger children, and I hated being used as a token. Like, oh, because parents are suffering, we're gonna force people back into the office. It was the same as shaming mothers when they wanted to go back to the office after 3 months of giving birth. Like the shame or the token of parents and using them to push a certain agenda is what is the most painful. So do everything you can to support them in whatever choice they make.
I will do 15 seconds. I just got a Slack message from one of my team who said she won't be making the team stand up this afternoon because her daughter's got an orchestra outdoor thing at the end of the year. If we can create a culture where that's great and okay, that's the biggest thing that can happen for parents and, by the way, people in this whole shift to remote.
For sure. All right, we got the next one here, which is any tips on how to show people what they should be doing, basically connected to training, when you can't fundamentally shadow someone? So I think this is definitely one of those big problems as we transition to remote and hybrid, is figuring out how to do that, like deep down training, the sacred knowledge that's always kind of inside of an organization on how to actually do your job.
I think that's huge. I think especially for people earlier in their career, access to sitting next to experienced elders who are have the competence and who these people are aspiring to follow the career path. It's a huge thing and it's a huge problem and something we really need to get better at. I think an amazing onboarding program helps, and the onboarding program should be not company history and strategy. Well, of course it should be that, but it should be team specific, down to the org level and down to the team level, with a real focus on that first 100 days and how you get people networked, how you get them into your documentation, tools, practices, ways of working. If you can get them a great start like that, then the isolation is less of a problem. But I think it's a great question, and I would love to hear from anyone who's solved it, because I think it's huge.
Can you solve it in 20 seconds? Anyone else?
I think if I could add something is like, again, we just need to design that path that was not designed before. Oh, we're gonna make you sit next to that person so you're gonna learn. Actually, it's less bothering to have you join all my calls. Join all my calls, and let's make sure we have 10 minutes between each meetings so I can give you a download of why I say that, or why I'm doing this, or this is what you can learn. This is the key pieces, the key takeaways. So again, I think we could definitely translate that into the digital HQ. We need intention. We need to be more intentional about it.
Got it. Great. And I know we're pressed for time here, so I'm going to try to fly through these questions. Fast response from everybody. How are your top tip for building and maintaining remote culture? Let's just fly around the room, 10 seconds. Top tip that you can give people.
Encourage people to spend time that isn't working time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so the social piece is really important, and being intentional about meetings and having that good onboarding experience to set up, that culture too.
Write down your culture and change it over time, but write down what are the behaviors that are accepted or agreed for, and allow for people to add more to them. So it's not a set of rules, either you this or you're not. Make it fluid, but make it in written form so I can access to it. And
great hiring.
Yes.
Paul, we have one for you, but I think you should actually ask this one after the fact. Is someone asked, like, how do you run a printing company remotely? I feel that's a bit of a challenge. Are certain employees jealous of others, and how do you solve for that? Maybe you could give us just 10 seconds on that. Like, do some employees feel jealous of other employees that are in the office versus remote? Or I guess in the factory versus remote?
Yeah, I totally imagine they will. And I also would love to work in Montego Bay. And I don't. I work in Boston. So I don't mean to be glib. I think we need to have the best experience for each team member. And that relies a lot on local leadership and interpretation of culture and direction at a local level.
Got it. That's great. And then Kate here asks, can someone talk about core hours, need for flex time, not just place? So that's actually something that we didn't really touch on. Does anyone actually run core hours inside of their organizations?
I mean, we're a global company, so it would be hard for us to say you work 9 to 5. It's 9 to 5 where, you know? So for us, as long as the work gets done, you know, we really don't care about the hours. That said, we're being more cognizant in San Francisco of being mindful of time zones and inconveniencing ourselves. As a person from London, I know what it is to join those calls at 11 p.m. at night. So being more cognizant around that.
Got it. I wish we could answer a lot more of these questions, but unfortunately we are out of time. There's about 10 more down here, but why don't we just leave it to Tara? I'm gonna leave it to you. Just let's really kind of give everyone the core piece of advice that they would take away from this if you had to take one piece from all of this last hour conversation.
So are you asking me to speak on behalf of all these experts? You only have 10
No, I'm thinking they'll all have their own 20 seconds as well, but the back end is yelling at me. I'm sorry.
I thought that was like a beautiful zinger. It's like, for all the times you made somebody go third, now you've got it. So as you close, yeah, what are you most hopeful about that folks take away and continue to learn and reflect and practice on, would be my question per Liam's theme. Paul, would you start?
Yeah, sure. I've said it through the call. I think listen to your team members, make a decision based on that and communicate it. When we made the decision to go permanently remote last summer, it was the biggest gift we could have given our team members at that time. Certainty in an uncertain world was just so well received. And if anyone is worried about making this decision, you go fast through the two-way doors that you can come back through, and the one-way doors maybe be a bit more cautious, but people need certainty, so provide certainty for them.
Yeah, I think I would say don't set your mind on a path and just stick to it. Like, be open and active listening, be open to the feedback, be willing to change, and have the only desire to do better each time. And don't be a statistics. We've all seen all the statistics. That many number of CEOs are completely out of touch with their employees, and that many employees are gonna quit. Don't stay stuck in there, and just open the doors and create a communication channel so you learn as you go with the only desire to do better each time.
Yeah, and I would add, if you're doing this right in the future, it won't be a them and us situation. It won't be the folks in the office and the folks at home. It'll be all of us just getting work done. We're just getting the work done and we're making the company successful. And so if you're thinking about the best way to do that, when you're evaluating your practices and new procedures, you're thinking about how do we encompass the whole experience, and we shouldn't be reverting to the old behaviors that we had in the office that weren't successful in, accommodating everyone. But I'm sorry, everyone, the office is not dead. Some people still need it. Don't hate me.
There actually were a couple comments about that, but I decided not to throw those.
You can tell me afterwards, Liam. I've got
for sure. So thank you so much for doing this. This has been fantastic. If anyone wants some more info, I would actually suggest you go check out The Clearing. Again, I know that wasn't necessarily a table read that I should be doing, but you should go check out their booth. I think that's if you have these types of questions, like people were asking in the chat, you probably need The Clearing to be able to actually break it down and understand what the heck is going on. So from there, thank you so much for everybody being on the session. I know I really appreciate appreciate it. This was a fantastic conversation, and it looks like the chat thought the same as well. Other than that, we will see you in the very next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.